Cyberpunk Edgerunners is an actually decent watch, and I enjoy the hell out of every moment of it. CD Projekt Red has clearly not forgotten about Cyberpunk like we all thought they wouldn't. They are still working hard on it like they did with Witcher 3, and this anime is proof of that. It's on Netflix, so if you haven't seen it and don't want any mild spoilers, stop the video now and go and watch it. If you do need a little push to watch the series though, my first warning is not to listen to anything anybody has to say about the trailer and how there are these two scenes in the trailer that are the most watched parts of the NSFW trailer. They are pretty much just there to bait you in, because the only time you ever see that exact scene where they're doing all the really spicy stuff. Yes, there's only two scenes. It's right at the very start of the anime for shits and giggles. So if you're wanting a raunchy Cyberpunk 2069 anime experience, this is not it. Go mod Cyberpunk or play some other game out there if you just want to watch cheeks clap. Nah, jokes aside, there's plenty of nudity in the show and animated by Trigger to boot, so that's pretty much a first for me seeing an actual show with nudity by Trigger. No kill, the kill doesn't count. This is like full out, no censors, nothing. And that will just have to tide you over if you want some fan service. The series is pretty serious at its core with a few comedic elements in between. Also, prepare a few tissues because you are probably going to cry. Maybe. As far as the visuals go, I do have to say it is action-packed to all hell and expands the entire universe of the game in ways that I enjoyed a lot more than the main game itself. The fight scenes and gunplay all have their origins from the game's visuals and mechanics, with the vibrant neon colors that Trigger uses in all of their productions, from Darling in the Franxx to Gurren Lagann. It's just been able to flesh out the entirety of Night City in a way that you've probably never seen before. They definitely chose the right studio for this anime, that's for sure, and it's pure excellence as far as Trigger's work always goes. The series focuses on our main protagonist, David. There's one guy in class that just doesn't fit in with his peers in his high society school, despite his mom not being very rich. So of course his mother is making ends meet to try and scrape up cash to give him a proper education. And of course his classmates and his teachers tend to look down on him quite a lot because they're all a bunch of rich, pompous assholes. And that's pretty much how the corporate side of the cyberpunk world is supposed to be. Then they pretty much call them corpos. He dreams of becoming something else apart from a boring corporate goon when he grows up, but his mother really doesn't want him to. Of course, if I go any further from here, it'll be spoilers, so after a few plot points, he starts trying on some cybernetics and gets scouted out by the mysterious anime waifu Lucy, a netrunner who sees his potential and wants him to join their crew of mercenaries, known as the Edgerunners. I definitely enjoy the dynamics between all of these characters, with David slowly getting to know the entire crew, starting off from his first job to slowly becoming an integral part of the Edgerunners. You've just got a varied cast of characters, from the short comedic relief, guns blazing all the time girl Rebecca, who pretty much solidifies herself as one of David's closest allies in the group with some time. And you also can't forget about the absolutely amazing boss that they have, known as Main. And he's pretty much the muscle of this whole group, who's just trying to keep everybody together. The cast pretty much comes in all shapes and sizes, and they all have their various motivations for being mercenaries, which makes them extremely likable as a group of mercenaries that you're following along this journey. and it just really can't get any better than this as far as a heist anime goes. The coolest part about the series is that it's written in such a way that you really don't know when the show is about to pull the entire rug from under your feet and throw in something completely different. And I was pretty surprised when the first twist did actually happen. And you definitely know what twist I'm talking about if you've watched the series, or if you haven't, you'll know it when you see it. If the series does feel boring after a couple of episodes while they're first introducing the characters, I will definitely suggest keep going with it. The entire series is fully available after all, and it's pretty much a heist series that's just been blessed with the holy grail of colorful and over-the-top fight scenes by none other than Trigger themselves. And of course, because it is Cyberpunk after all, it is extremely graphic at certain points. So viewer discretion would be advised. David follows the classic coming-of-age story of a character who slowly overcomes his weaknesses so as to protect his crew, and will just stop at nothing to become stronger just to keep this new family of his safe. It really just shows the beauty of found family, like the likes of Spy X Family, with a lot more gun, of course. Plenty of parallels and events seem to occur within the series, and you know it when you see it. It's somewhat poetic even if I don't like artsy plots myself, and I just really like it when a main character has a good, solid reason for what he does. And I do find David a pretty cool character as far as this goes. So you might ask, after listening to what I've been talking about, what's the difference between the game and this series? Edgerunners is actually a canonical prequel to Cyberpunk 2077, and pretty much all the events throughout this series happens before Cyberpunk 2077 even happens. So if you did actually play the game, I would highly recommend watching this series. Edgerunners just explores a lot more deeper and serious sides of the entirety of Night City, the cybernetic enhancements that people end up relying on, as well as the dangerous side of becoming a mercenary or a cyberpunk who pulls off these crazy heists for eddies. And as far as I can tell, I was finding this series a lot more immersive compared to the original game, with the characters and settings being used to their fullest extents in this case. Especially by the likes of Trigger in terms of their art direction as well as the vibrant setting. I was finding myself feeling for these characters in Edgerunners a lot more than the characters in the actual game. And I didn't have to play a 20-hour campaign just for it. We also finally get to delve into these deeper problems of constant tech dependence in this cyberpunk world, where people constantly enhance their bodies with cybernetics, and there is a very looming threat that they call cyberpsychosis. If you don't really know what cyberpsychosis is, it's what happens when you install too many fancy gadgets onto your body and pretty much become more machine than man, and it overloads your brain, so you end up going crazy. It's just become a lot more of a problematic thing within this series, and just makes the entire vibe of the Edgerunners series a lot darker than majority of the Cyberpunk open world, where you're just basically an immortal cyborg warlord that raises gangs to the ground with no repercussions to your robotic enhancement. I guess the main difference that I also found from the series is that it really just explored how it would feel like to have a proper mercenary group, rather than being a solo one-man army all the time. Each person in the show just fills in those different roles of a proper mercenary group that the game sorely lacked. And you have Lucy and Kiwi, they're the netrunners who provide the backup and the hacking. David handles the stealth aspects as well as sort of the escape route, and the rest of the gang provides the well-needed muscle of firepower, and sometimes Rebecca comes in with a sneaky distraction, or she just goes guns blazing all the time just to be able to get the job done. It's really quite a shame when you see this team working in such an awesome way, sort of filling in different roles, like a bit like a fantasy party with your mage and your rogue and your warrior. It just really makes things feel a lot more immersive in terms of you not being pretty much the master of everything, really. Of course, before I do start going into a whole rant about how Cyberpunk should be a multiplayer game, I'll spare you the boredom and go straight to my verdict. As far as Cyberpunk goes, I do have to admit that I definitely enjoyed Edgerunners quite a lot more than I expected for someone who pretty much played the game at release. But I do have to say that the terminology in the background are very reliant on the original game for the world building. Little is really done to introduce the setting of the show, although they do a little bit of stuff here and there to try and explain things. But it's very likely that this anime is intended to be a supplement to the original game itself. As such, my recommendation for a non-Cyberpunk player is to ultimately watch it with someone who has played the game before, so that that player can simply explain the terminology to you while you watch it, or it might just be time for you to put in some research. But if you really can't be asked to do any research into it, then I just watch it for Trigger's stunning visuals, and the visuals alone would just put it up to about a 7 out of 10 for me if you haven't played the game. And this is purely for that and the stunning music alongside it, and of course the plot. For anyone who has played the game though, this is a surefire recommendation from me, as I said before, to watch this for a proper cyberpunk experience in this vibrant and dark landscape being utilized to its fullest capacity. The context of the game is highly recommended in this case, and I would be very inclined to give it a solid 9 out of 10 for someone who wants to see more of the cyberpunk world in its fullest and appreciate the little references to all the key areas and character cameos from the game, because you're going to see a lot of that in this series. As far as that goes, this pretty much wraps up my thoughts on Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Do let me know in the comments if you have seen the series yourself, or if you haven't, do let me know if this helped you decide if you wanted to watch it, and pretty much give your own thoughts as well on this series. And of course, do stay safe, stay humble, and stay cultured in all things anime. This is the Anime Knight, signing off.